All right, good morning and welcome to the channel. Today, I want to discuss the big new changes for HUD and FEMA cooperating with each other to stamp out fraud. So, there will be no passing through the free lunch line twice. Okay, the free lunch line is being closed here. I mean that in a rather humorous way, but I'm going to bring in some details here for you guys to see this connection that the US government's making now with other federal agencies as well as disaster assistance. Now, you might have known that in previous videos going back years, I identified the loophole a long time ago. In fact, I even encouraged clients at that time to actually do that because I knew that if a disaster actually hit your city, town, or county, I knew that for many people that were homeless, all you had to do was go to a relief center, and by virtue of that disaster, they were forced to house you. And so, I was using that system kind of mechanically to produce a result. But anyways, it appears the old days are over with, and that loophole has been sealed up real tightly. So let me go over some of the data that they're now sharing, and so you can better understand. And it's a cautionary tale as well, because if you participate in these programs in the newer days, as of today, then you could be potentially committing fraud. So full disclosure is certainly required. And the old days are gone. No, like I said, no passing through the free lunch line. So up here next, we're going to put up FEMA, HUD and FEMA data matching for assistance, disaster assistance. So HUD and FEMA are using a formal computer machine agreement, which is a CMA, to coordinate disaster housing, aid, and identify unmet needs and prevent households from receiving federal assistance twice for the same disaster related expense. The current program was updated in 2024 and renewed again in 2025 through HUD's data sharing program. To be clear, all types of natural disasters for the southern folks, you're looking at forest fires and different things, and of course, also hurricanes and other weather related events. But moving on from there, what it matches, FEMA and HUD can compare disaster assistance records with HUD housing program, FEMA individual assistance and temporary housing records, FEMA approved housing and assistance amounts, FEMA registration number, disaster numbers, address, household details, and the last four digits of Social Security, insurance and national flood insurance programs, claim system and payment, as well as data. HUD's rental assistance participation, including the Housing Choice Voucher Program, Section 8, public housing, project based housing, Section 8, Section 202, Section 811, and HUD FEMA CMA. So everything at this point. A big part of this video is full disclosure. Guys, we're in a circumstance now where it's all connected, and the old days, as I mentioned before, are over with. So while this will matter to Section 8 families, now of course the U.S. government is always going to spend this, give it a spin as to why it would benefit families. But we all know what's going on with this. Okay, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, Democrat or Republican. This is not being split. The government spending it is an excellent idea, and of course, it helps solve fraud. But in the same time, why sell it as something that's helpful when in fact it only benefits, respectfully, politics? Okay, so anyways, why it matters: the voucher holder is displaced by a federally declared disaster, may qualify for FEMA sheltering or temporary housing. This is a direct shot across the bow of those that are homeless. If you end up in a forest fire, a hurricane, a blizzard, and you're already homeless and you race out to the FEMA center thinking you're going to get a free caseworker and housing, those days just died. Okay. If you're homeless today and the hurricane blows through, you will be just as homeless as soon as it leaves town. FEMA's no longer going to assist you. They're just going to view it as your tent was blown into the hurricane, and that's the end of it. Okay. I know that's rather harsh in the way that I put that, but to be clear, if you've already been assisted some way or another for COC, continuum of care, housing choice voucher, any other program, they're simply not going to do anything at this point. Anyways, moving on from there, a voucher holder displacement of a federally subsidized and declared disaster may qualify for FEMA sheltering or temporary housing. The match helps FEMA and HUD coordinate and transition emergency aid back to HUD-assisted housing when the family can return or be rehoused. It is not it is not designed to prevent payment of two federal benefits for the same housing need or the same period. It's also, they're saying it's not to punish the family merely because it received Section 8 and disaster help, but I can assure you they're not going to give you both. FEMA assistance. Sorry, I'm choking a bit this morning, guys. Let me take a swig of water here. I'll get to going real good, and I'll tell you what, I'll start choking up. So, anyways, FEMA assistance may still be available when the disaster makes the HUD-assisted home uninhabitable. These agencies are supposed to coordinate benefits so the assistance fills gaps rather than overlaps. Well, it seems like a rather targeted effort in from my view. But anyways, CDBP and DR recovery assistance in the matching program is also important as FEMA's immediate response phase to include all states, cities, territories, tribes administering HUD's CDBG DR funds and use it for FEMA data. And so, again, this is a declaration. They're connecting all these agencies together. And if you're making more than one try or to utilize more than one form of program under housing or any declaration on the books, then they're not going to permit it. So they will do to they're going to be identifying disaster survivors, unmet recovery needs, conduct outreach and recovery programs, calculate whether FEMA aid, insurance, or flood assistance payments are already covered and under any particular repair, replacement, rental, or recovery costs. They're also going to look and apply flood insurance and compliance rules where required. And so this is also a secondary attempt, I believe, to ensure that there's not duplicate payments for assistance in other areas. And I think that might have been brought on strongly by insurance companies, so the duplication of benefits exists only if the aid in multiple sources exceeds the household documented need for the same recovery purpose. Assistance for different needs, such as FEMA rental assistance and later unreimbursed home repairs, can be treated differently if properly documented under HUD's CDBG DR rules and the DOB resources. So you see all these acronyms. They're basically two set databases, and they're strongly driven, obviously, by insurers and the U.S. government. Important safeguards will be that this is not an open-ended public access to personal records, but it really is, in my opinion. CMA operates under Privacy Act, limits access. You can limit shit all you want, okay? But when you connect all this, it's very clear they've got everything at this point, okay? How many times we tried to do something like this in the US and the guardrails come right off, okay? So they can make all the claims they want and say that it's limited, but I don't feel that to be the truth. Why am I going to say that? Because look, I operated at the federal level for 26 years, consulting clients, okay, specifically Section 8 and housing programs. I can tell you this right here takes the guardrail right on off, okay? Limited to what? And then who limits that person after that? And so access likely will be granted across all federal agencies, with exception to banking and probably the IRS. Practical takeaways for survivors: keep records of every FEMA award, insurance payment, denial, repair invoice, rental receipt, and any item returned of unused funds. If a HUD or CDBG DR program says FEMA assistance creates a duplication, ask for a written calculation showing the specific disaster related need, each source and amount counted, the period and purpose of each payment, and any appeal or reconsideration deadline. In other words, cover your ass. You need to have receipts for everything, because if they open up an accusation against you in terms of fraud or otherwise trying to duplicate services through HUD and FEMA, and then this is going to end up in a circumstance where people get arrested. Okay, so it's important that you keep a detailed record of all actions, because clearly they're wanting to create a circumstance where they can investigate anybody at this point. It's rather annoying, in my opinion. We have enough shit to solve in this country without further big issues from government dipping into this. I understand, there is always going to be a percentage of fraud involved in almost anything, but I mean, to pretty much exploit people and then say, hey, by the way, you need to have a practical record of every breath you've taken since the hurricane blew through your town or the blizzard has froze you. And then if you don't, then you could be subject to the king and the queen. And so I'm a little bit annoyed by all this. Yeah, I can understand, but I mean, why they might want to connect things. But I mean, for people to actually, you're asking people that have their houses burned down have a fucking receipt, right? A hurricane blew through. There's no house left, but they need to have a fucking material copy of everything. So, in my opinion, I'm not for this shit. Okay. Honestly, it's over the top. And I feel like people are going to be convicted of things simply because they don't have a material record. So, obviously, it meets a need. And I think that there is some fraud involved in like I said, anything out there. But honestly, I don't see this going very well. And saying that we're limiting things, but we're pulling the guardrail off, and then we're going to connect all the agencies, and then everybody's going to be a fucking suspect. Nah, I'm not good with that. So, uh, fortunately, my opinions are mine. You don't have to share them. But I've worked at this long enough. I rarely argue against things, but I'm arguing against this one. um, Clearly there's a benefit. When people in dire situations, the last thing they need to do is have to go through town after the house has been blown down, flooded, and everything else. And then out of all the things they can bring with them, they should have a rope connected to a fucking filing cabinet pulling down the street because they're unsure whether or not the government's going to charge them because they may have duplicated efforts. You see how ridiculous this is? We have better shit to do in this country than to create shit like this, honestly. All right, I'm gonna move on to comments, and I'm gonna let this video go because I'm highly annoyed with it. Lake Williams, good morning, and everybody, and it's my birthday. Well, happy birthday! How old are you? You didn't mention that part. You got to tell us. Hillbilly Hermit, good morning. Imminent Possibility, good morning to you as well. Thank you for coming back. Imminent Possibilities, happy birthday, Lakeisha. Come on, Lakeisha, cough it up. How old are you? You let us know if you're 90. India, good morning. Good morning to you. Lake Williams, 54. All right. Well, we share about approximately the same age then. So happy birthday. Hope you go down and hope some family and friends visit and get you cake and some candles and get to business there. Don't spend your day on YouTube. Lady D, good morning and happy birthday to that person. Indian Exposed Investigations, HBD. Well, thank you for the correction on acronym. Now, guys, I'm going to post everything about this, including notes, in the description as well as in the comment section for you guys to review. I'd have you look at those data sharing systems through the federal government and see. Unfortunately, the next natural disaster that blows through, whether it's a flood, a fire, a hurricane, or otherwise, a blizzard, um, if you're a homeless person, you're out there, you're not going to be able to participate in that program. Okay, if you do that, there's a high potential that you could be charged with a crime. Okay, they're going to make a distinction that at some point you probably have entered into utilizing continuum of care programs, and furthermore, they'll be able to establish you were previously homeless, and therefore sleeping in the FEMA tent isn't going to get it. They might consider that duplicate efforts. I don't know to what extent this is going to go, but it's clearly a shot across the bow. And I don't think there's enough inclusive fraud between the two to really warrant all this extra. You know, there's lots of fraud out there in many programs, but this is simply not one of them. And so it seems very directed to assist those that have, and those that ain't got, then charge them with a crime. And so it's hard to read this any other way. I'm open to interpretation. Anybody wants to tell me, and I understand what the little definition there is, but how many times do we create things through government where there's a literal intent and then there's what actually fucking happens? And so that's the argument here. How's this really going to go down? Who's really the target of this? Yeah, there's implemented rules. There's a manual, right? Somebody in Harvard was paid by the page to write all this incestuous information, right? And create a fucking telephone book at 10 cents a word, right? In Harvard. That way, 50,000 words later, they've been paid. And now we have some incredulous rules. And it all disseminates down to what? A personal attack on the homeless. Okay. So, God help you if you're in a tent and you're homeless. If a hurricane blows through, you will get housing, but apparently the government sees fit that you might find yourself to the county jail, or you may receive federal housing and 3 hots in a cotton federal prison if you double dip and roll through the lunch line twice. Do not roll through the FEMA lunch line twice. If you get caught ticket, you pass through, you get one honey bun. If you pass through twice, you go to prison. That's the new game we're playing these days. We might as well put up cameras and count who get how many honey buns each person gets, how many free rolls of socks, and if you partake too much, then that's it. You pluck one too many fucking free waters off the prison you go, and so I just this to me doesn't chime the right way. I mean, we've got better things to roast and cook in the country than to figure this shit out. So honestly, I'm just over it. Moving on there, Minka Angel, happy birthday, Lakeisha. Hot Sugar, welcome back. Minka Angel, I'm so glad that there's no fraud in HUD. Well, we can talk about HUD and fraud. Let's talk about fraud in every other federal program. Okay. There are lots of other federal agencies we could focus on that are filled with fraud. Let's look at Medicare. How much fraud's there? It doesn't involve any homeless people. It doesn't involve anybody in Section 8. But yet, HUD, we talk about HUD, but let's talk about Medicare. All the people that have money and jobs, then why is that shit filled with trillions of dollars of fraud? It actually eclipses anything HUD could have ever done, right? And we go into other agencies and talk about even greater frauds. Let's go into the banking system. How many banks you go to that they do prayer circles? Did we not have to rescue the greedy banks back in '08? Does anybody remember that? And so trillions on trillions. So we talk about HUD and its dollar. Let's talk about the 100 million to trillion in the banking industry. Then we can move over to Medicare, trillions of dollars lost people. So if we're going to argue HUD, let's argue all the agencies on a fair and balanced envelope. And at the bottom of the list would be HUD, right? It receives the least. And therefore, while we all believe there's so much fraud there, I can assure you the numbers are insurmountable in other federal agencies at much greater amounts, right? We spend more on wars than we do on highways. So that argument is moot with me. But moving on from there, that's just simply the opinion that I'm sharing this morning while I'm overcharged. I went and had me a Vietnamese coffee with just a little hint of hate in there, I think, because it's got me hardwired this morning and kind of agile, I suppose. Lady D, good morning, and thank you for the wow. And Scottus, sounds like you just more increased consolidation of government. It is. It seems like the future is going to be an interconnected reality where we're going to be tracked the minute we leave our home. A satellite will be on you. You'll receive tickets as you drive every inch of the road you travel. You 1 mile over, automatic ticket and deduction out the bank account. We'll have facial recovery in every store you walk in, the dollar store or Macy's, and then bam, been there before. There'll be auto bans from stores. We've already, and so this is like a police state. I don't mean that it's current right now. What I mean is, if we continue on the path as we're going in this country, we're going to have a camera, facial recognition. People going to need a fucking fingerprint and an eye scan just to get in the store. And if you don't meet the credit credentials, you will not get into the store. You see where all this shit's going, And then we talk about block cameras. So there's your government eyeball right there at the end of the block. So if you're late, you didn't pay that traffic ticket, the cops are already waiting. He just logged in the block. The minute you open your garage door, arrest. Right? So that's how we're gonna play this shit. And I just see more and more and more of those. I know this channel's about Section 8 and HUD, but it's a frustrating future. Nobody wants to be monitored. It's like a human experiment. And this is just another great example of a bunch of oversight. The government is just therefore the citizen. They're no different than ever any other human. The government's run by people, but I mean, look at what we face every day. And so that being said, guys, I'm gonna come back to you later today, and we're gonna discuss informal hearing for complaints for PHAs. I wanted to tell you guys I have a lovely story coming out Tuesday. The director of the housing authority, okay, the vice director of the housing authority in Columbia, decided they were going to commit fraud. The person we put in charge, we again hired another prostitute to run the housing authority in Columbia, okay, not the country, over here in the U.S. And they cut their own voucher, rented the property, stole about 20 grand. Now this is the person that heads it. We hired a prostitute, a male prostitute, to run the housing authority, basically. Okay. Who hired the male prostitute? The very people we call commissioners. They're in charge of the prostitutes. And so, again, we make now 132 videos. This will be the 132nd time that my channel's had to report that we're hiring directly from the prison system and we're putting the people in charge. Hookers, drug dealers, prostitutes now running we now have gone a couple of years, and so 132 housing authorities, right? New York, 90 indictments, California under indictment, and they shut off funding there. Now we've got male prostitutes. They've even, I was looking this guy up, and he's managed to wipe out most of the social media. But I got one old picture he forgot to delete from the internet to protect his identity. So I'll publish that because we call it the housing and what? The housing authority. Of what authority do you speak when you're a hooker? And then you are hired, a hooker, hiring a hooker to run a housing authority. Typical business in the US. I told you syndicates run these housing authorities. They're as useless as a day is long. Only a handful of people end up being honest in there. And we see continued efforts to steal, lie, cheat, violate, and violate civil rights. And just another pure example. This wasn't the janitor at the housing authority. This was not the manager of the housing authority. It was not even the director. It was the vice fucking president of the housing authority. Gave him not even in all but a year, and it has already opened up, cracked the bubblegum machine, and stole all the fucking change out of it. Just another day at another housing authority that actively runs its wanted ads in the local prison, or they ride around on the city bus hiring from Craigslist and from under the bridge. And then we appoint these idiots as a director. And then, of course, the commissioners, these really important people that suck up tax dollars locally in your city and call themselves a commission of what? A commission of old men that hire prostitutes, hookers, and drug dealers, and then they put them in there in charge of housing authorities. This is why I cannot wait until AI shuts down this whole fucking deal with that. Honestly, we would be better off hiring from the county jail. Example after example. I got people working at housing authorities coming to the channel. Oh, we don't do that. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. How have I managed 130 videos and verified through the news 132 different housing authorities, all caught in fraud, running it like it's a personal piggy bank? But here we are again. So Tuesday, we're going to talk about this hooker, and it appears he's going back to his old life now that he stole money. He tried to delete his social profile, and he's back to his old games. Who ever heard of a hooker with a LinkedIn profile? I mean, so I guess he's got a credit card reader in his pocket, in his wig. So this is a big problem. This is the big problem because we have commissioners that are corrupt and they hire hookers. And then they call him the director of the housing authority. And they just installed another crony. It seems a lot like politics, doesn't it? So we're going to talk about that Tuesday, and I won't be friendly about that at all. Matter of fact, I'm going to talk about that in the most despicable manner. I'm not going to hold any punches on that because, once again, we just traded out one prostitute for another running the housing authority. And so I'm going to put them on blast. That way, when you Google it, since I've been doing these videos so long, 2,000 or 3,000 videos, when I make a video, it'll rank right under the housing authority. And for the rest of the housing authority's life, my video will remain 1/2 inch under it. That way people can understand just what kind of fraud they run in that place, and they can send all the cease and desist they want, and I'll just keep publishing videos all on Google, first page, right under the housing authority, sometimes above it. That way they can live in infamy because that's what they want. Well, guys, I've enjoyed talking with you this morning, and I'm hoping you all have a great Sunday. For those of you that don't enjoy profanities, I don't use them that much at all these days like I used to. This video was a special event, a frustration, but I think that the rest of the videos I'll probably produce this week will lack that, except for Tuesday, possibly. It depends. And we will finish out this week with more EDU's educational videos, where I continue on a 2,000 video run to cover all contentious questions and subject matters related to Section 8 housing, as well as HUD, and also national changes for new federal rules and so on. Okay. Moving back in the comments real quick, just wanted to see what you guys are up to. Hot Sugar Jay, that's crazy. This is happening. It happens all the time. I just bring it to the table. It's like toilet paper. It's just a different square, and we go through the roll. Jay, if you call the Bar Association of Washington State 2 steps up from me, there's an attorney who violated the law. That's not surprising. Even state attorney's office is filled with things that aren't good. Hot sugar, it's getting bad everywhere. I know it is. It really is. The real life glam life. I'm so glad I finally caught you. Well, I'm glad to have you here. Come back and see us again Tuesday. It's going to be super spicy. We're going to put a little bit of Ray's sweet and spicy barbecue in that video. Imminent possibilities. Yeah, got spicy on Tuesday and go off the crooks. I do occasionally, and it's based on sometimes my health problems mixed with caffeine equals a rather bitter me, but I have my mornings. Today was a bitter one, and so is the topic. The glam life. Oh, and got here late. Well, late's better now than never. So, hot sugar. Look at the state you live in, Jay. The housing there is bad too. I never made any claims that the state I live in is fame. I ended up in this state because of a good friend of mine. Okay, it wasn't even the first on my list to live in the state. In fact, I can. It's probably dead last. I'd rather be. I'm not going to mention the state because I know you guys will get political about it, but I pick states where there's mountains and a lot of natural beauties when I'm looking at retiring. And if I have a choice, it'd probably be the West Coast, but it would be probably in Washington State because of the natural beauty, not because of politics. In the end, I don't give a damn about that. Okay. There's no voter registration when you die. The real life lamp. Oh, got there late. And last up, Hillbilly Herman. I love special events. Well, really, it's just me doing street talk. Plus, I'm just talking about the housing authority. You know the guys was coming. I have done so well in not talking badly about housing authorities, but unfortunately, I've lost my patience with that because there's too much going on right now, and I think it's time to go on a little side run here and start talking about the newer housing authorities that have been caught. Remember, the federal government has seen fit because of President Trump's investigation to start investigate all housing authorities and demand records. And they started that earlier this year. We're going to see a rather large playbook of mugshots and closed housing authorities because of it, many of which have been investigated. To date, over probably 500 people have been indicted. More than 100 housing authorities have been put in receivership, and many more have had employees arrested and so forth. And this is going to continue at a rapid pace all the way to the end of administration. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Sometimes many of you that want to utilize federal housing vouchers have concerns, obviously, of the agenda of our president. But right now, you can look at the bright side. His focus is entirely on housing authorities, and he is not shy about it. Okay. I mean, they've gone after New York, they've gone after Tennessee, and the states keep counting. He doesn't care whether the Republican states or not. The only issue here is you either comply or they send federal investigators, and they're doing this at a rapid pace. That's why I'm seeing Google News littered with housing authorities scrambling to figure out why the criminals they hired are getting arrested. Where they're changing directors of housing authorities like toilet paper these days. You can't even keep them. They're gonna have to open it up a hiring session at the fucking Popeyes chicken because we're running out of criminals to put into housing authority to work there. If they take any more prostitutes off First Street and put them to run housing authorities, then what are we going to do? We're going to have to hire honest people. Okay, especially if you leave them alone with a printer, they're going to start printing vouchers for them and their family until they get caught. So I could have told you if you take a male prostitute, give it a director's job at a housing authority, his first objective was to print vouchers for the entire fucking family. He got caught. He thought he'd been upgraded from hooking. He doesn't have to stand at the light anymore and shake a loose change cup. He's now able to print vouchers for all his constituents. So if you see any hookers with only one fucking high heel, you'll know that Hooker Bob was given the job of the housing authority, and he's reopened the waiting list for friends and family at the cocaine party. So that's how it goes sometimes, guys. No, I didn't get the invitation to the cocaine party. I don't live on First Street, so I didn't get a voucher. Did anybody get a voucher from Uncle Bob? Because he's now indicted and has vanished, right? So we need to remove the ink from the printer and at least have the director work a year before we give him access to a fucking printer with ink because he will print all the budget out. So I'm sure he'll up with a bag full of vouchers. God knows who got them. Nobody can get a voucher, but you hire a hooker. She's already. I mean, the printer was fucking smoking the first day he moved in. He didn't waste any time. Probably took a pull up the old meth pipe and then went ahead and fired up the printer, and fucking vouchers were going out the window out of there, despite the list being closed. So I've told you guys thousands of times, if you don't think that housing authority isn't working hard, they're working hard for themselves. Okay, that's how we go. Well, guys, I've enjoyed talking with you today. I think that was about all I'm willing to say today, and I wish I could talk better about Bob at Red Light. He's probably down there now with vouchers waiting for you guys, on standby. But unfortunately, that's how it goes. Housing authorities continue to hire off the streets and out of the county jail, and this is what we get. And then the people that have to make the hiring decisions are commissioners. These are the people that have gone and found Jesus while they were in prison, and now they're commissioners. I don't know they found Jesus as the devil, but I mean that's what it is. And they replaced Bob with somebody, and I cannot wait to show you who they replaced him with. It's just one bad decision after another. I think the county commissioners must have gone in the bathroom, okay, or the local casino, and just hired the broad with the cocktail that was handing out cocktails, and she's now going to be running it. Though she doesn't even have a GED out the fucking bubblegum machine, she's now the director of the housing authority. And when you find out where she used to work, another housing authority, so she roasted that one. They then kicked her out of there. But we hire retards. Oh, you went ahead. So basically, her resume said, "Hey, I went over here, fucked one housing authority, and I'm back in the job pool, okay? Because I'm a snake, a rat, and a roach, and I'm in the hiring pool." And the commissioner saw that she was highly qualified. They only look for corrupt people. The commissioner go, "Hey, well, who can we hire? Let's hire her. She's already created insolvency one housing authority. Why don't we hire her? She's already burned that one down almost to the ground, stole every penny. Maybe if we hire her here, we can get kickbacks this time because old Bob took off with everything. He didn't want to share with us. So we'll have to continue to hire, but we need to do a little better. This time we need to make sure it's an even split. We get half of everything. So while I'm talking in pure fantasy here, okay, and I'm completely going off in fantasy land the way that I'm describing this, but you see what I'm trying to share is a sentiment. How are we supposed to trust a building with the words authority on it when when the entire process of hiring revolves around again hookers and drug dealers and people that just they still have fucking ankle monitors on and they're the housing authority's director, okay? Their GED literally says federal prison on the second line. So what degree plan was there in prison? And then we hire another one. She's just fresh out of one housing authority and ripping it off, and we just hired her to replace the other hooker. What are we doing? So yeah, I love to hear about that. And so we're gonna bring that up Tuesday. All right, that's the end of this, guys. I've had fun trying to making this rather interesting and compelling story. And keep in mind, guys, I've overinflated that. It's certainly not going to be that juicy, but I just wanted to share kind of the sentiment a lot of people may feel, whether it's true or not. But yes, Columbia Housing Authority did do what I suggested. Now, whether their hiring practices are really that, I don't know. But I can tell you this, I've looked at the new candidate and I'm not impressed, okay? We could have done better. Honestly, I would rather a high schooler that just got out of 12th grade run that housing authority than when I'm seeing move in there. In both cases, both prior and current. We need honest people working in housing authorities. But to get honest people hired, we also need to make sure city government isn't bought off. Otherwise, they just keep hiring crooks, right? And so I can tell you, the former director of Maryland moving over to Columbia. Can you just imagine that? Didn't we just unplug one crook and now we're going to install a new one? Who makes these decisions? How many drinks did they must have been drunk at the board meeting? Honestly. All right, guys. This is the wrap up point. We'll see you again this afternoon for EDU and also Tuesday. We're going to talk about that housing authority, but this time without the storyline and without so much the sentiment. And then you can be the judge of the actual story. I just presented it in a comical way today. Only half of that was true, obviously, but fair enough. We need to bring light to this to ensure the housing authority goes on to better things if possible. All right, guys, enjoy your day. We'll see you again. Bye for now.